Welcome again to OFM, where metabolic health matters. And we're talking about real world metabolic health. We're not talking about studies and all this sort of thing. We're taking the science and making it work in the real world. And today my guest is a fairly new convert to OFM. He's been doing it for, I think, a couple of years, maybe.
Yep.
Year and a half. So Charles McConnell, welcoming Charles McConnell, who's chronologically 64 years old, soon to be 65. And I've got a nickname for Tim. He goes by Tim. He doesn't go by Charles, but goes by Tim, which is his middle name. Anyway, the nickname I have for Tim is Mr. No Excuses, because as you know, the point I want to make by calling him Mr. No Excuses is because if Tim can do what he's done, and we're going to be talking about that today and sharing his journey, anybody can do it. Because this is a guy who was in a deep hole. Partly it was his own thing and he accepts that responsibility, but partly he was just following the standard advice out there for health and wellness and what the doctors say and all that stuff, and found himself in a deep hole, which you're going to learn about here in our conversation. And he managed to dig himself off unlimited resources. He empowered himself. At one point, he was utterly dependent on the health system, in a hospital, in a bed, confined to a bed. And it was at that point that he made the decision to empower himself with his health. And through that journey of empowerment, he's where he is now. We're going to just dive in. I'll let him say it because he can say it way better than I can. So, Tim, welcome to the OFM podcast. It's really an honor to have you on. Oh, and one more thing I want to point out is not only did Tim empower himself to take control of his health and go from a deep hole to thriving, but he did this resourcefully. Like he took control of learning, thinking, and experimenting and doing, and he did this all on a budget. And you know, Tim is retired. He lives off his Social Security, so he's on a budget. So he's even buying Vespa and supplements from me. We give him a great discount because he's one of our ambassadors. But he's making it work on a very limited budget. So that's another point to make that supports my thing about him is like Mr. No Excuses. People say, oh, Vespa's too expensive. The supplements are too expensive. Keto diet's too expensive. You know, everybody says that. You know, they say, I can't afford that, but they're driving a new car. They're going to Starbucks for a foo-foo coffee. And so I don't want to go too far, but everybody's got excuses, right? And like they say in the Marine Corps, excuses are like buttholes. Everybody's got one and they all stink. And so I want to welcome Tim. He's the guy that doesn't stink. He's made it happen. And so, you know, we're talking about buttholes and digging ourselves out of holes, but here I go with my sophomoric male potty humor. So we're going to leave that behind and go into Tim's Mr. No Excuses journey. Tim, welcome, and it's an honor.
It's a privilege to be here, but apparently you haven't been around me yet after a long ride as far as stink goes.
Oh, I can fix that too. We're going to fix that. We're going to fix that too, because guess what? Moi used to smell like I peed on myself after a long run in the heat. I don't do that anymore. I'll show you a real cheap solution, and you just got to use the Castile soap. You switch over to the Castile soap, and after you've inoculated yourself. But we're getting off topic again. This is Peter's world. Go off in all the rabbit holes. So we're not going to do that. We're gonna focus on you. This is about you. So Tim, once again, welcome. You're 64 years young and getting younger, according to your doctor.
Yep.
And yeah, let's start with kind of give us a brief thing about you, and then I want to start really where that cascade of that downward cascade that got you into that deep hole where you're sitting in that hospital bed with the abscess, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it started. You were on that typical road, sad American diet, working jobs, and you were driving a truck. You were doing reefer loads, right? Cross country reefer driver. All right.
I pulled a reefer, also pulled flatbed and stuff, depending on the company. But I liked pulling reefer. That was my favorite.
And you can make some money at that.
Yeah. The only bad part about it is driving east of Pittsburgh into the New York and Jersey area. That was never my favorite. But yeah, it provided a good income. I did it on and off for about 10 years. But I was always working some job. I mean, if I didn't have a load, I had a business at home that I could make money off of.
Well, you even stoked coking furnaces in a steel mill, right?
Yeah. After a year after high school, I got into wheeling pit steel up here in the Ohio Valley and spent 10 years there, most of it in the coke plant, as well as a few other places.
We're not talking about Coca-Cola, folks. We're talking about the coke that goes into making steel, which is made from real high grade coal.
Yeah. Well, you're not the first person to make that mistake. My wife and I were part of a church planting group in Virginia Beach, and I got up and gave my testimony and said I worked in a coke plant. And there was actually people seriously thinking that might have been what I was talking about, making coke. But some of them even thought it was to drink. But no, it's neither one.
Yep.
But it is necessary to make steel.
That's right. So let's talk about that fateful day that things, so you were doing reefer loads. How much did you weigh when you were driving a truck before the accident?
Well, I got up at that point, I know I was 300 pounds plus, because my driver's license a year before I started driving trucks showed 290. And
yeah,
so
driving truck will do that. You'll put on some extra weight.
Yep.
Yep. So let's start with that day that things really what were you doing? You had a hot load of lettuce. Let's start with that hot load of lettuce.
Yep. I had my reefer went out and my lettuce kept getting hotter and hotter. And I was coming into Indianapolis. Well, I knew where the
Thermo King dealer.
Yeah. Yep. I knew where they were at. And I went to get off the exit ramp, and down the road, they had the daggone road closed, so I couldn't get, and I could see the place just down over the hill from me. And I got stopped there. They were getting set up to let the traffic out of the Indianapolis 500. So that gives you a time date, because it was just getting ready to let them out. And
so it was spring, and it was spring, and it was warm, so your trailer was getting hot.
Yep. But so I seen the cop down at the bottom of the ramp, and I didn't want to drive down there, so I pulled the truck over, and I was already mad for having to stop. Threw that door open, and I went to step out, and I missed my first step on the truck and went straight down and landed straight-legged on my right leg. And yeah, I had a hard time walking, but just a little gringe and a little cringe, and went down to see the cop. And he knew I was mad, and he explained what's going on, and he showed me how to get down there. And I did get there and got the reefer fixed, and the lettuce was okay, at least most of it was. And but at that time, I didn't know the damage that I had done to my hip. It wasn't until months later, when I was walking and stuff, started getting really bad pain in there. And it took a while before I finally went to see a doctor and had an MRI done. And they said, man, you've got bone against bone in your hip socket. And at that point, I was trying to lose weight, trying to do a little running, which I am not a runner. I'm more of a lumberer. And I'm going down the road, and every step I'd take on that right leg, just, that pain. And every once in a while, my leg would go out and I'd fall. I mean, just like I'd step and like my leg wasn't there, it would just collapse on me. And found out that was all, pinched nerves and everything else caused from it. So I became even more restrictive on what I could do with that.
And of course, your weight went up.
Yep, weight went up. And then by 2014, I ended up having a hip replacement surgery. And you know that after the surgery and after the recovery and got through it, I mean, I felt good, but you have a tendency, if your head's not in the right place and you're not educated right, you'll use those things to keep yourself down. Well, I can't do that because I've got an artificial hip. And, you know, I don't want to, no, I can't go hiking. Could you imagine if I get out there in the woods and something would happen and I couldn't get back because of that artificial hip?
Yeah, and of course the doctors also want you to be cautious because it's a standard of care.
Well, I was over 300 pounds when they did the hip surgery, probably 310, 314. And because one doctor wouldn't do it. He says, I won't touch it until you get down below 280. And I said, yeah, lose weight when I'm restricted on my movements. I said, that's even going to be harder to do. But I found a doctor. Matter of fact, the doctor ended up being the brother of the people who owned the bike shop I bought my first bike. So it was quite a connection there. But anyhow, he did the surgery on it, and I come into recovery, and I started taking it easy. I thought I wanted to start running again, especially after I seen some things on OFM and Jeff Browning. I mean, the things that he had done, it's like, man, I got to go to see my doctor on a regular checkup, and he says, no, don't run. He goes, you got a good hip, and it'll outlast you all the cycling you want to do, but don't start running on it. I mean, I go out hiking all the time and a little trail jogging between, you know, in some nice areas, but I don't go out there and beat it like some of the athletes that are part of Vespa do. But I give it a workout on the bike.
Yeah, so getting that hip, and then kind of you started to gain weight, and then you said something, you wound up in the hospital with an abscess. I mean, you were doing the standard American diet. You didn't know any better, trying to be like heart healthy. So you were avoiding the saturated fats, fatty foods, and carbohydrates, right? Yep.
Well, it wasn't just one, it was 2 times that I ended up in the hospital with abscesses. And I've got the scars on the back that to show them. I've got a picture of the wound on the one that they did is huge up here on my back shoulder. They cut all that out and they left it open like a giant X pattern there or something, and they left it heal that way. They didn't stitch it back up, and they put a wound vac on it, and I had to wear that wound vac for, oh God, I can't remember how long it was, but I've got a picture of my back wound like that, and my granddaughter, my oldest, she was just a little girl then, and she was dressed up like one of the cartoon character doctors, Doc McStuffins. She was all dressed up, went to the doctor's office with me. Doctor said she might not want to see this. It might make her sick. No, she sat there. They let her take gauze and help clean it out, and she even helped put the dressing on it. And you're just a little 6-year-old girl doing that. And that was back in 2016, 2017. Then what happens? Less than a year later, I get another one on my back, and have to go in for the same type of deal. And they just said, you know, you've got inflammation and stuff in your skin, you know, in your body, and this is how it's coming out. And again, you know, you're going to have to watch what you eat. You're going to have to, you know, cut back on your fats and your cholesterols and all this stuff. And she says, because that's, you know, you got to get rid of the inflammation. Little did I know what was really causing that inflammation. And at that time,
what was your diet like? Yeah, you said you kept Krispy Kreme in business.
Yeah, I kept Krispy Kreme, but not only Krispy Kreme. I mean, heck, it was nothing. I'd get on an ice cream kick, and I'd do a pint of ice cream every night. And, you know, we'd go out, and I had my own business and got out, did a lot of work. Some of that time we were with the Salvation Army, we had a part of a church planting team up near Youngstown, and I was always going, but then they were always feeding you there too. Had meetings all the time, and you'd have lunch meetings. And well, you know how those kind of meetings go. You get into a church crowd, and everybody eats good. But my problem was it was eating good and eating right were completely two different things.
Yeah.
And I found out that, once you start getting things in line, I don't have that hunger anymore where I can sit down and eat a whole pint of ice cream at one time.
So
Or
let's just back up a little. So you had that second abscess and you wound up in the hospital, right?
yep. Yeah, both times I was in the hospital admitted.
Okay, but
And
this was like the low point, the second time in the hospital. Tell us
Yeah.
about that.
The second time was the absolute worst. I ended up checking myself out of the hospital. My blood pressure was sky high, and they had put me on an antibiotic.
You had a pump to pump out the fluid in the abscess, right?
Yep.
You were bedridden. You were in the hospital for how many days?
I'd been in there for 7 days, and they were supposed to release me. And one of the doctors said, "Oh, we're going to need you in here a little bit longer because we haven't got your labs back yet, and we don't want to release you till then." And as it turned out, they put me on an antibiotic, which is the absolute strongest antibiotic they had at the time, and I guess it's still one.
Was it IV antibiotic since you were in the hospital?
Yeah, it was in an IV.
Yeah, that's vanco. That was probably vancomycin.
Yeah, vancomycin.
Yep.
Vancomycin.
Yep.
Well, vancomycin is one of those things that it never leaves your body. It gets embedded in your fat cells, and you have a certain matter of fact, if they give you a certain level of it, when you come back in, it's kind of starting off at that same level. They hit me with that vancomycin a second time, and all of a sudden my body began reacting negatively to it. I felt terrible. It was just, I couldn't tell you how bad it felt. A girl come in, took my blood pressure, and couldn't get my blood pressure because it had all the IVs. They blown veins out. She pumped the thing up so high that it actually blew open the holes in my arm, and blood started coming out of it.
Oh God!
And it freaked her out, freaked me out. I said, I've never seen. My skin was almost black for a few days around it because she had just wouldn't let that blood pressure cuff go.
So you had this abscess, obviously because it was draining. You were having trouble maintaining good blood volume, as shown by the blood pressure. You said your blood pressure was sky high. Your pulse was sky high. This was the low point. What was your blood pressure and pulse at that point?
I know my blood pressure when I was in the hospital was over 250, over 250 over 90 and higher. I just remember some of the numbers from that. It had just gone because they had put me on blood pressure meds trying to bring it down. And I don't know. I do have what they call a white coat syndrome. I can leave my house, be 113 over 60, go to my doctor's office, and it'll go to 140 over 70. And when they found this out, I was in a hospital a year ago this September. I had an accident and ended up in the hospital. They thought I ruptured my adrenal gland, and they put me on a blood pressure monitor. When the doctor was in there, my blood pressure was 140 over 75 or 80, and they would leave, and my blood pressure would drop down to 113, 115 over 50 over 60, and it'd be perfect. The second they walked in, it would go up, and the doctor said, "Yep, you've got white coat syndrome."
Okay.
But,
so you checked yourself out of the hospital because at a certain point then.
Because I knew while I was there, I like to read and do research and stuff. I started researching vancomycin and found out that, I had my complete tolerance of it, and my body just couldn't take any more of it. And I said, no, this has got to end. Well, I got up, took the IVs and stuff out, and I told them I'm leaving. It's against doctor's advice. You can't leave. I said, I'm leaving. I left that hospital, but I was smart about it. I got out of that hospital and went down to another hospital, went into the ER and told them what was going on. So they admitted me for that night. They said, let's run tests to see what's going on. They didn't put me on vancomycin. They didn't put me on anything other than just fluids. And they come back in the next morning. I said, we ran cultures. She goes, you just got a regular staph infection or whatever they had called at that time. And says, there's nothing serious that would require anything more than a penicillin antibiotic. Says, we're going to release you home with an antibiotic to take. And that ended up happening. Well, all this learning about the problems and being caused by just the obesity.
Yeah, that's the difference, because I will say vancomycin is like the nuclear option of antibiotics. IV.
Yep.
I've actually been on it. So we have that little, we're part of that little crowd of users. I had an MRSA staph infection that wouldn't go away, and the oral antibiotics weren't touching it. And I had to admit myself in the hospital and go on a 48-hour course, and that knocked it down. But I wasn't overweight. I was metabolically healthy. I think a month earlier I'd run Western States. And, so getting that dose of vancomycin in my case, boom, knocked it out. And otherwise I probably would have lost my leg and maybe even my life, because I was in tremendous pain for about a week before the decision was made to put me in a hospital, because the oral antibiotics like the penicillin weren't touching it. So what probably happened was instead of doing a culture, they just assumed you had like an MRSA and went from you getting admitted to going to the worst case scenario. And because, you had multiple things. And this is one of the things Dr. Kathy and I were talking about just last night. Like, you get somebody in the ER in intensive care, it's like treating somebody who was in the place where you were at that point just exponentially complicates things. And then all of a sudden the interventions don't work as well. And then you got to compensate. Sometimes, like your issue with the blood pressure meds and the blood volume, you're compensating because once you do one med to take care of one problem, then that creates other problems. So the doctors have their hands full. And we're actually going to do a podcast about how not being metabolically healthy complicates, the treatment of an acute situation like you had.
Exactly. I mean, we were at two opposite ends of the metabolic.
Right.
And just, I'm what happens when was at the bad end. And who knows, like you had said, had you not been metabolically fit, who knows what the outcome would have been for that.
Right. But I bounced. It was like, I had to spend 2 days in the hospital getting an IV, but as soon as I got that option, which is the stuff that kills MRSA staph infections, it was like, boom. It was like a light switch got turned on within hours, but anyway, and that's the thing. I think the point I want to make here that's important for the audience to realize is, like, some of these acute interventions that modern medicine have, they're life-saving. They will get you out of a hole real quickly, but you need to be doing that base work of getting metabolically healthy to really take advantage of those when something like that occurs, rather than get in the situation you were in at that low point, right, Tim, where your metabolic health was actually causing acute things that that had to be intervened, like having an abscess that was caused by where you were. Your body was in basically survival shock mode, and it was creating these issues that required acute interventions. But because you had multiple metabolic health challenges, it made the treatment of that really tough.
Yep. Well, my body, though, was throwing up signals long before those abscesses, and I had no clue that that's what it was doing. Neither did the doctors. Every winter, I'd get these, my skin would get this eczema all over it, up and down my legs, on the back of my arms, just dry, scaly stuff, and they'd give me a prescription. But whatever they did, none of it ever cleared it up until spring come along, and I'd get back outside. So I just thought it was one of those winter things. But once as a matter of fact, now I haven't had, this is my third year in a winter that I don't even have anything come up on my skin.
There you go.
I mean,
So let's fast forward. Like, so you checked out of the hotel, not the hotels, the hospitals, but you at that point you've made a decision to take control of your health.
yeah.
And so what did you do?
Well, I did some diets at first. I mean, I went on Atkins and Nutrisystems and different things like that. And, that was probably 17. And just look, I played with it for a couple of years, watching, trying to watch what I ate and doing the whole, can't eat that. That's too much fat. Trimming off all the fat off my meat that I ate, made sure there was nothing there. So reading every book that I could on nutrition, looking at that pyramid and trying to find.
So you were starting off like super green from ground zero.
Oh yeah, I didn't know anything really, about it. I mean, I had some stuff when my wife and I had studied when we were younger, called nutropathy, just studying nutrition and natural therapies. But I don't know. You get lost in it all.
Well, and here's the point to kind of jump forward. Here's the point I make is like when I started out this, it's like everybody points to a diet and exercise, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, it's not about the diet. It's about your metabolism and physiology, your core metabolism and physiology. And diet is a tool. Exercise is a tool. Supplements are a tool. Vespa is a tool. Managing stress is a tool. These are tools around the individual. Like, you have to figure out how you use these tools and the variables within them. So, but everybody looks at a diet as like, that's the thing, because it's easy to sell,
But the thing
so you fiddle around with diets, and at some point you came across keto, Atkins, et cetera,
Atkins, right? I came across Atkins while I was driving truck, and I had, got a hold of, that was prior to all my stuff on my back and stuff. So I knew Atkins, but then again, Atkins, I just couldn't go into a restaurant and eat a breakfast of that much bacon and stuff, as some people would say. But it helped when I was driving truck, but it didn't last. There was nothing there to grab a hold of. And then I went and tumbled down to where I had those abscesses. But I found keto, 2.5 years ago, just prior, just 6 months prior before learning about Vespa. And I decided, I made the decision, and this was the hard part, is I'm going to do it. I'm going to sell out completely of my former diet, whatever I had eaten, and go wholeheartedly. And we'll see if this works. I was told it wasn't going to work.
You made a commitment to yourself.
Yep, made that commitment. And it was hard. My wife is thin. She's got a sweet tooth. And I'd be on that, and she'd bring home a box of donuts that she'd get from the Salvation Army or something. And that's where she worked, and get donated all the time. This is what she'd bring home. I finally got her to the place where I said, if you want a donut, keep it in the car and eat it for breakfast in the morning, or hide it. I said, because, temptation, it's a strong thing. But finally, we got on the same page, and she started pretty much eating the same way I do. But I understand that, if I don't make her eat what I eat, I got to the place after being on it for 3 or 4 months that it didn't bother me. She could sit there and have, something sweet or a piece of sweet cake, and it didn't bother me anymore. But once I had decided to make that switch into keto, I found it wasn't like the first time when I did Atkins. It actually started working, but then it wasn't giving me what I would hope. I thought, well, I'm losing weight, but I'm still not being as efficient and using my body and athletics as I thought it. You'd already
started exercising, right?
Yep, I already started exercising.
You had the you had the exercise down during all this your little dietary journey to different diets, right?
I started walking the year prior to keto, just exercising, and started riding the bike was all prior to keto. But that first winter, when I gained 30 pounds, 35 pounds back over winter, was the slap in the face. It says, how can I do this? I'm riding my bike every day. Of course, I wasn't riding it as much in the winter or getting those big sweaty workouts in, and but
well, and the other thing is, a very key OFM protocol is making sure your vitamin D is optimized in the winter.
Yep. I wasn't really doing anything with it. I took some over-the-counter vitamins, and
yeah, no, it's
sometimes
not
they come out whole. They don't even dissolve. But,
well, it's like I tell people, when you take a multivitamin and you see that neon yellow urine you're peeing into the toilet, that's your money. That's your money.
Yep.
So okay, so you were exercising, you got on keto, and then what was happening with the exercise? You said you weren't feeling as efficient.
Hold on 1 second there. I had my leg tucked up underneath me on the chair, and I've got a nerve in the back of my leg that if I sit up on the edge of a chair, it triggers it, and I get a muscle spasm. And what's really
okay, there's him modeling the ASOS kit. So while he's stretching his leg out there, okay.
Yeah, I like the jersey. It was a little more expensive than what I ever spent on a jersey, but this is absolutely the most comfortable jersey that I own.
Yep. Okay, well, I'm glad for that. I mean, yeah, I'm glad you love your ASOS jersey. So let's get your camera back up on you. There you go. Okay, so you got keto working for you, and then what did you notice?
Well, I started dropping weight. I'm sometimes 2 pounds a day, and the weight just pouring off. And I thought, oh man, keto is, this is where it's at. And it is. I mean, it's good. But I was thinking it was all of everything, watching all those macros and everything else, no carbs. Yep, there it comes back again. I sat down too quick. Hate to have that happen during this.
All right, this is authentic, guys.
Whew. Yeah, I get it. I can cause that just myself. I had to show the doctor, told the doctor about it one day, and he goes, well, what's causing it? And I said, well, every time I hit right here and I hit right there, and bang, the spasm hit. So there's a nerve or something back there. And frankly, I think it's to doing with losing so much weight that my legs are still reconstructing the protective tissues.
Let's look at that down the road. So anyway, so what did you notice in terms of your exercise with keto? You said you didn't feel as efficient.
I couldn't build up the long stuff that I wanted to do. I was getting out there, and I'm still doing, keeping my ride short. Some people say they're long rides still, but once I hit 40 miles, gosh, it's like my energy started dissipating. And by the time I'd get home, I'd have to go sit in my chair and just sit there for the evening. I mean, I was done.
And what was it like, in terms of the performance? I mean, your miles per hour, how it felt climbing hills?
No, climbing hills. All came a little while after that, but when I first started climbing hills, that was just prior to Vespa introduction, and it would take me the half a mile hill, or not a half a mile, it was almost a mile, but 565 feet, I think it is, up to the top. And it's 8% grade. And I've got one of those little granny gears on there where I could go up that hill without hardly any effort. And I would still be stopping a dozen times, I think, on that first ride going up that hill. It took me over an hour and a half to get up a hill that was less than a mile. And now I go up that hill in about 12 minutes.
Yeah. So
you notice it's still a steep hill.
So the take home is you got yourself into the keto diet. The keto diet was working for the weight loss, but you noticed a big drop in your performance and physical strength.
Yeah, absolutely. I did not have the endurance energy.
You didn't, and you probably didn't have the explosive energy or the ability to push, like you say, on the hill.
No. My sprints, I could do a sprint, and 30 seconds into that sprint, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I set it down. Let me see. A month ago, I did a 6-mile sprint and increased a PR by like 3 mile an hour that I had on a segment. It wasn't no hills or nothing on it, but it was flat, 6 miles long, and I kept my heart rate above 140 the whole time. And
I love it. I love it because that's one of the things about VESPA that I tell people. When you're doing a hard effort, the way I describe how you know the VESPA is working is when the difficulty of the workout pushes against you, you feel like you can push back rather than just hang on. You can sustain that high heart rate. So, all right, Tim. So you found keto, and then but then as you got keto working for you, you also found the performance limitations of it. And then that set you on the next step of your journey, which was, you said earlier that you knew something, you need to look for something. So what did you do?
Well, I knew that I needed more energy, and then somebody had turned me on to gels, and I had tried them before, but really didn't think anything of them. Like I had said earlier, it was tastes like I'm swallowing Vaseline or something. But I decided, well, I know they're not keto and all this and that, but I'm probably burning enough carbs that I can handle a couple gels for energy. And before I knew it, I would take 4 or 5 of them on a ride. And I mean, I didn't get a lot of negative from it, but I would get a sour stomach. You know what I mean? I'd get indigestion, and it was almost like you eat something you really didn't agree with, and you could just taste it for hours. I could taste those gels forever, like they were just sitting there sometimes.
Okay. And then so what happened next?
Well, I just out doing surfing and stuff, and I'm not sure where I seen the first ad for VESPA. I thought it might have been like another gel, or something. And I got in it and checked it out, and I thought, this is pretty interesting. And then one thing led to another, and I ended up getting a $20 4-pack, a sample to try. And I couldn't really, let me see, that was coming up. I bought it in April for the Memorial Day ride we had this one this year. It would have been
probably 2021.
Yeah, or 21. Yeah,
2021. Yeah.
Well, it was 21 or 22 because this year was 23, and this is my second ride on it, so it had to be the 22 one.
Okay.
But I had tried it prior to that, and didn't buy any again because again, it was just getting the money and everything else a bit more. But that's what I tried. I bought a second 4-pack. I called on there and went to the site, and it gave you the option to buy a 4-pack. Actually, I bought those 4-packs like 6 or 7 times, but I bought it specifically for that 62-mile ride. I knew it was going to be up in the 80s, low 90s that day. And I said, I'm going to get this for this. And this is really the big switch, because I bought those and I took them on that ride. I didn't take nothing else to eat that day. I mean, they had snacks and stuff along. I took that Vespa when I left the house, the first one. I got down at the start of the ride, and I took another one at the start and took off on that ride. And I took the other 2 that I had during the ride. And we got down to the end, and 62 miles, and I'm like, anybody want to go some more? I'm ready to go, and I'm still in the 200 pounds range at that time. I hadn't dropped below my 200 pounds yet. I don't remember what I was, but no, everybody was done. I rode home, but that was the first time. And after that, I've been using it.
And but prior to that, we use it. But this is one of the things we tell people is like with Vespa, what you notice is what you don't notice, right? You don't have the ups and downs in energy, the loss of focus, the soreness. But like when you used it before, you didn't get like this big surge or rush, but you didn't get the crash either, but you noticed you weren't eating, right? And you had more energy. Like, tell us about the first time you used Vespa and you came home.
Well, the first time I was waiting for something to happen. Like, you feel that that buzz, that adrenaline. The first time I took an ultra, I noticed just a little feel to it because I wasn't used to the way it was structured. And I mean, it didn't give me a buzz or nothing. I could feel it kick in. After that, it didn't happen again. But what happens on it is you go out and you start riding, waiting for it to kick in, but your mind goes to what you're doing. And the next thing you know, that you're finishing up at the end of the day, and you said, wait a minute, how did I do that? I mean, I took my Vespa and stuff, but I went up and down these hills, did 3,000, 4,000 feet in climbing. This past May was the first time I did over 6,000 feet in climbing. And I did that 6,000 feet this year, and no soreness whatsoever. I mean, I haven't had everybody tells me, you did a big ride, you need to take a day off, or I tested positive for COVID, you need to quit riding and take a week off from it. No, I worked all through that, took my Vespas, went out and did my workouts, didn't quite do 100% of what I did, but I'd go out on those days. And to me, going out and doing a medium effort was a recovery ride.
Yeah, but just jumping back, you said something earlier when we were talking that you used to, when you first started using Vespa, you'd take the Vespa and you'd take a keto lunch with you, right? And you'd forget to eat the lunch, and then you'd come home and mow the lawn and do stuff, and then it was 3 or 4 hours later you'd have supper. Whereas before you said you would get in your recliner and collapse for a while. Well,
when I was on straight keto, I would take a keto approved lunch with me all the time. I had a little bag or carry on my back, put an ice pack in there, I'd carry my lunch, and then I had a favorite spot that I would stop at, because 20 miles was my limit before I needed to sit down and take a break. Get out of the keto,
whether it was keto or carbs.
Yep. 20 miles was it, even still on keto. But I mean, on keto, I was losing weight and feeling better and able to move, but the energy was still right around 20 miles, 25. I'd have to stop and go ahead and eat. And I'd have a sandwich with using keto bread and ham and cheese on it, maybe a sliced tomato or whatever. And then I'd go back out and finish my ride. Well, the first time that I had taken Vespa and was taking more than one on during the ride, I had my stuff in the back in the bag and went out and started and did my ride. And I come out to the place that I normally go, and I didn't really feel like stopping. I mean, I wasn't tired. And I went out and did some more hills and stuff. Ended up being like a 62-mile day. And it comes towards the end of the ride, when I'm ready to turn and go home, I stopped to go to the bathroom, and I don't know what made me open my bag to check something. And my sandwich was still there, and I realized, I didn't stop and eat that day. And I thought about it, and I said, no, I'm not hungry. So I rode on home. And
then you mowed the lawn, and then didn't you mow the lawn afterwards?
Yep. I got home. My wife would, she'd get supper ready. I cook a lot. She cooks a lot, just depending on what we're doing. But I got home and wanted to know if I was ready to eat. And I said, nope. I said, I need to get the grass done before I forget about it. And I don't have a lot. I mean, it doesn't take me 15, 20 minutes to do it. But I wanted to sit in the chair, but the only thing I did was change out of my kit and put my jeans on and went outside and cut the grass. And came back in, they sat down in the chair and probably watched Adam 12. And then they said, okay, here it's a couple hours later or whatever, and we ate, and I know it was getting close to like 7 o'clock, which I don't like to eat after 7 anyhow. And we had supper, and frankly, I didn't even finish everything. And that happens all the time now. I mean, that's not just an occasional thing. She knows when I come home from a ride, it's going to be at least an hour before I'm ready to have supper. If even,
So you started using the Vespa and getting these great results, and then what happened? You started to look at our vlogs and stuff, right?
Oh, yep. That was a nice thing about it, because the assortment of vlogs on there covered a lot of questions that I had, and I just had to search through them and find them. Matter of fact, even coming up into the holidays, and well, how can I still maintain what I want to do without dying from overeating on the holidays? Well, you had a blog about OFM and the holidays. Listening to the different testimonies on some of the heroes that I had watched on there. Then listening to the story of Jeff Browning, and in his past one when he did the Moab 240 last year, that was like, I said, this is what's going to happen to people who can get into the protocols and not just do them out of regiment, but do them because it's part of them.
Right, because Jeff was like you. He had gotten into a pretty deep hole from competitive racing and pushing those gels and winding up with candida. That he was actually considering giving up competitive ultra running in 2015. Yeah,
there's a lot of friends around here that are runners, and I've told them about the OFM and best. I said, go check out Jeff Browning, and I said, you want to see an ultra runner, one of these endurance guys? There's somebody that you ought to check out. The guy was bragging about around here doing marathons and stuff like that. And I said, well, how about do a 240-mile marathon? And at 52 or 51 at that time, I said, and set a course record. I said, I'd hate to have been a guy who was 20-some years old losing a race like that to a 51-year-old man. It's like, but there's somebody you say, I want to be that when I'm 51 years old.
Yeah, well, now people want to be like you when they're in their 60s. See,
I would have never thought of being like this at 64 years old 10 years ago. I thought I was on the downhill side and was never going to get back up on it. I said, it's impossible. I'm too old now. I'll never lose the weight.
Too old, too broken. Yeah, exactly. But you did it, and you empowered yourself. Like you because of your limited resources, you didn't hire us to coach. You just basically watched the vlogs, watched the testimonials, and figured it out. I mean, like the importance of vitamin D and magnesium, the importance of bringing carbs back in strategically, the importance of using Vespa. Yeah.
Well, when you talked about the vitamin D3 and stuff, I said, well, I don't even know if I'm deficient in it. Well, even though I spent some time outside, I had my blood panels checked and the records of them. Oh yeah, my D3s were way down. And something, nobody ever said anything about it.
Nope. Yep. That's something I learned years ago, over a decade ago, was, and I thought about it, and I thought, wow, the medical reference range is off. It's too low. The low end is too low. And then when you think about the context in the history of vitamin D deficiency and vitamin D related diseases, the low end of the vitamin D range, as far as the standard of care is, it's enough to keep people asymptomatic of the traditional diseases like pellagra, rickets, preeclampsia, and all that. It's not enough to get them optimal. And what we found with working with athletes, I started this with an athlete in Tennessee where she was just, desperate to be able to do her Ironman and had a knee injury, and it got her going. Then I started with Zach Bitter, and I was already doing it myself, but it's just like we saw that anybody who had their vitamin D below 50, it was suboptimal. 40 to 50 is suboptimal. 50 to 70 is about the range you want to do. If you go higher, you can go higher temporarily, but I don't really like to see people go up to 100, which is the top of the range.
Yeah.
But it's like above 50 is when the magic happens. And then the interesting thing is a lot of the papers on COVID have come out on vitamin D ranges, and they said pretty much anybody who's metabolically healthy and their vitamin D is, their 25 hydroxy vitamin D is above 50, their risk for a serious COVID infection is essentially zero.
Yeah.
So, but we just saw the performance and health benefits, especially the fat adaptation part, just take off when you got the vitamin D under control. So, yeah, no. So you basically absorbed over a year period this whole thing with OFM, and now you're even learning more because you're training to become a coach.
Yep. And I said that foundation I got from listening to all those vlogs, though, is really what turned it on. I mean, you told one story which had turned my whole thinking around on the way that I ate. It was the people getting mad at the fire trucks on the street for blocking the street and forgetting about the fire structure, you know, and sugar and carbs what caused the fire. And
they blame the cholesterol. It's like, the cholesterol is the firemen and the fire trucks in the street because they see the cholesterol. It's like, that's what's causing the heart disease.
And that kind of, just that right there kind of put the whole thing together. And then when I started looking at it like that, I said, well, what good's it do to eat, you know, a healthy meal, and if you're shoving down a ton of carbs and sugar with it too, because my insulin's going to be going crazy trying to take care of the sugar, then it's going to be storing even sugar as fat, it's going to be storing fat as fat. And
and then you start to understand what drove your obesity prior.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, so it's working for you, and let's talk a little bit about Vespa, because like I say, as part of the no excuses, you know, you're on a limited, you're not raking it, you don't have a big retirement, you don't have a big paying job yet. You know, hopefully we're going to change that with some coaching stuff we'll be doing. But, you know, you're like a lot of people, especially in today's economy where gasoline and groceries have gone through the roof. So even the basic needs are expensive. And so you make it happen. So you mentioned something earlier about like when you were doing the gels, it's like the cost per pouch is very expensive, but then with Vespa, you eliminate several products. So then the cost is much, and a lot of food. So the cost is really kind of a push, right?
Absolutely. But I think in the long term, the Vespa has become cheaper than all the gels, because when I was going out, and especially prior, I would use the gels earlier, then get rid of them when I first started keto, but then ended up trying to bring them back thinking that would help me get up the hills. But I had found out that I only needed those carbs for those really hard efforts. When with the Vespa, and it's helping you burn your fat, I said I had plenty enough energy. I mean, like you said, as you know, that aerobic fuel source. And most of the time when I'm out there riding, I'm not sitting there, you know, in an anaerobic state doing sprints or hard climbs. It's that, you know, aerobic state. I'm sitting out there keeping my heart rate, you know, down, keeping my power levels, you know, in a nice moderate ride with those spurts of energy that when I'm ready for one, if I'm riding with a group, when I know the group's going to take off, I need to be ready for it. Well, I'm always ready for it now. And it's just that with the gels, I had found myself going through $10, $15 worth of gels in one afternoon too, and then still needing them beyond that. And I'm not talking about eating some like 150 grams of carbs an hour, just, you know, using 4 pouches of them, that, you know, $2.79 a piece. They added up, and then I'm still eating, you know.
And plus you were tired when you were done with your ride.
More so when I can take a gel now, and I mean there's absolutely no problem. But I only had 2 gels in my pouch at the beginning of the season. I've got 1 left, and I use that on a big climb.
Yeah, and the other thing is, let's talk also about the value of the soreness and the paradigm shift of that soreness and recovery. Like, we're not, you know, your recovery, you're not as sore You recover faster.
Absolutely. Well, I go out and I do a big heavy ride. And I know it's, it puts a toll on your body, period. No matter what, it puts a toll on your body. But the next day I'd get out and I'd go out and do 60 easy miles. To me, easy miles are like on the bike trail or something where, 1% grade at the most. But I'd take a couple days like that and then go do another hard effort. But now I find out I can do hard efforts. Matter of fact, it wasn't that long ago, I did 6 or 7 days in a row, metric centuries, and all of them with 2,000 to 3,000 feet in climbing each day. And there wasn't any, soreness. I didn't feel like I can't get out of bed this morning. I wake up at my standard time every day, same time, whether I have a watch on or an alarm clock, it doesn't matter. I wake up at that same time every day. And roll out of bed, that's another thing. I mean, when I started cycling, before I started following OFM protocols and stuff, and before Vespa, I'd wake out of bed, take those first steps. It'd be like it was when I had that muscle spasm, getting up out of that chair gingerly, or getting out of the bed gingerly so I don't break something, and then getting about my day. Once you get loosened up, okay, I was good to go. I don't have to get out of bed now. At 65 almost, I should have to get out of bed and do a regimen of stretches before I go to the bathroom just to walk down the hall. No problem whatsoever. I run up. We live in a place that's got a basement, mid-floor, and an upstairs. I'm up and downstairs all the time because the bathroom's in the top floor, and I run up the steps. And
wow.
I mean, I almost want to put my stopwatch on, get my own PR and put it on Strava for climbing the stairs.
You're king of the mountain for the stairs.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, Tim, what would you say to people about this whole lifestyle? So we're, it's like we're trying to, as we're trying to change that direction of healthcare because it's kind of flawed, right? What's considered healthy is actually pretty sick, and it's not a one trick pony or silver bullet type of thing. Like I said, it's not, I don't sell Vespa as the one solution. It's a tool, and I don't talk about the dietary patterns. I don't want to talk about a strict diet, with structure and macros and calories. I want to talk about an eating pattern that's dynamic, and it changes depending on the context of one's life. And we talk about stress, and we've got to get people to think for themselves and realize that they're multidimensional and that those solutions are multidimensional for them. It's not that one thing that they're being sold, told, and controlled on, right?
Absolutely. I had, I was under that paradigm of, eat right, clean your plate off, and eat 3 meals a day, and maybe a couple snacks in there if you're a good boy. But now, after going through everything, it wasn't the fact that somebody told me, you had to stick to this regimen like this or that. Now, I do intermittent fasting almost every day.
Without thinking about it.
Without thinking about it, absolutely. That's it. I am not trying to do it. I eat when I'm hungry. And most generally speaking, if I'm not working out, a big workout or something that day, usually it's around noon to 1 o'clock first. But if I'm doing a workout, I don't get hungry until about 6 in the evening. And those are the days that I eat 1 meal. But on the other ones, 2 meals, a light one, but everything is under, well, heck, before my calorie intake, if I actually controlled it, looked at it, it'd have been anywhere from 3,500 to 4,000 calories at least. You go to McDonald's and you pull 1,200.
Right.
But
what is it now? You said something like 17 to 2,000.
Yeah, 1,700 is about average. Some days. Now, if I'm doing a big ride, I've had my days 900 calories.
No, that's, I was just going to say that because that's what I've seen is on these big days I do runs, I probably don't get to 1,000 calories,
Yeah.
you
No,
know,
that's quite a,
right. And then the next day I'll eat really well, but you know,
I've had a couple days, especially doing a lot of exercise, and especially on the days when I was, had taken the Vesper regularly and and had really worked on it. I come home and it's time to go to bed. My wife had never said anything because she had eaten before I got home, and I'm saying, I didn't eat supper tonight,
yeah.
and hadn't even thought about it. Now that don't happen a lot. I mean, you still have old habits of, like meat, supper and stuff. I'm just not meat, potatoes, and fancy stuff, all that.
And it really
But I
makes
forgot about it.
really makes it simple and sustainable to maintain a healthy weight too.
And here's the strange thing. I went to bed and I, didn't get the grumblies and everything like that. I fell right to sleep. I mean, I was, still pretty tired. And I get up in the morning and I'm thinking, well, I'm probably going to have to eat breakfast. I never eat. And I still didn't find myself getting hungry until around noon. I had my coffee. And I mean, one of my things is I still like my bulletproof coffee.
Yeah. And the thing is people don't realize when you get your metabolism working right, we're so robust that we have we have robust stores. So it's a wonderful thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So let's close this out. And what would you say to the audience? Because you're the no excuses guy. I mean, hopefully the people have taken into account your story and just how deep that hole is. Yep. And you don't want to get to the point where Tim was, to realize, hey, I need to take control of my health.
Well, if you're looking at any kind of way to get your health under management, first, do it before it becomes, I got to do something or I'm going to die. I waited too long, and you shouldn't have to wait too long. You've got the information out there. Take it, digest it, and start doing something about it. And it can be done. Like Peter had said, he goes, if I can do it, you can do it easy. Because I sat and I thought about it, and I put it off, and don't you put it off. If you're out there, if you're overweight, if you look at yourself, you're not overweight, but you're not as healthy as you should be, and you want to be, hook up with Peter. Find out get some information, watch some blogs.
Thank you, Tim.
You'll find the answers, and they're not going to be the kind that leave you tired and wondering if you did the right thing. You'll know you did the right thing very shortly after starting.
Well, thanks very much, Tim. And once again, Tim's the Mr. No Excuses, and it's not going to be talk to Peter. If you're looking for that metabolic switch, you might be talking to Tim. Yep. Here in the next several months. So once again, we're at vespapower.com for the products and OFM.io for the content, information, consulting, etc. And we're here to help, make you better. Like one thing I want to make clear is it's not about the Vespa. It's not about the diet. It's not about the exercise or all those things. It's about you, and it's about your core physiology and metabolism, and getting that as your foundation. And then once that foundation is there, just continually building that foundation and that robustness so that you not only are burning fat as fuel, but you built in the robustness to where you've got that latitude in your dietary patterns to where you're not stressing out about what you're eating. Just like Pam, he's going to have some cake and ice cream with his granddaughter here next weekend. And, you should have that built-in robustness to do that. Whereas, if you think it's like I say, you look at both sides of the spectrum. You got the keto camp, which anything that's got a teaspoon of sugar in it is all of a sudden feared and poisonous and all that. And then you have the high carb camp that people can't survive more than 2 hours without a snack or they bonk. And so, and it's like, no, folks. this isn't about these camps and diets. This is about you and empowering yourself with you to get on your journey, your metabolic journey to find, higher health and peak performance and get to your potential. So thanks again, Tim, for having you. It's an honor not just to have you on this podcast, but to have you participating. And, we're already working with John Float, helping him. I mean, he dug himself a pretty big hole too, and we're gonna get him out of that hole. And hopefully some people will watch this, and like you say, they'll be healthy, relatively healthy, but they don't realize that they need to do more. And
I plan on going up and visiting John, and I'm going to ride all the way up to his house, just under 100 miles each way. And that's a very doable thing where I live.
Yeah, double century day. No big deal.
I won't do it all in one day because we're losing light. And I tell you what, there's some crazies out there on the road, especially after dark.
Oh God, yeah. No kidding.
But no, I will go up there and spend the day talking to him and everything, and then ride back the next day.
All right, man. Well, thanks again for taking the time with us, and we'll be continuing this journey together and hopefully helping a lot of people out.
Yep. And thanks for having me.